Greetings, Reverend John O'Toole. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We just had a big rainstorm here, but it's all cleared up now. I want to give you an overview on how to use a DSLR camera. Now, there's no point in getting a DSLR camera if you're not going to use the features. If you're not going to use the lenses and you're not going to use the features, you may just as well take pictures with your smartphone. But if you want to explore the great world of photography, then you want to get yourself a good DSLR camera. Now, Canon, I use Canon cameras, but there's a lot of brands out there: Olympus, Nikon, Pentax. Pentax was my first DSLR camera, which was a film camera. Sony. I mean, you just have to decide your price range and the features. Now, there's two ways of taking pictures with a DSLR camera. One way is to put it to auto and never take it out of auto. And when there's not enough light, like right now, there's probably not enough light, and this is why we're doing it live, folks. I had a little connection problem with the card, and I had to reformat it, and there we go. So this is a point and shoot. This has, right now, it has a 10 to 18 millimeter zoom lens, which is a very wide angle lens, but it gives me the ability to take a wide picture, particularly in my house. And it also takes some nice pictures outside if you're trying to get the landscape. Now, landscapes with this kind of a lens is going to give you somewhat of a fisheye effect. So the lowest you really want to do is to go to a 22 and to reduce, to not have the fisheye if you're doing landscapes. But I got this as to use as a portrait camera for taking pictures mostly of people. But then you can also get longer lenses, like a 300 millimeter zoom, 500 millimeter zoom. It's all about how much you want to spend. If you're doing wildlife, you want a longer lens because they're not likely going to walk up to you and tap you on the shoulder. You're going to set it up on a tripod. Very important to use a tripod. I have two cameras right now on tripods so that I can do this video. So it's important that, you know, you could hold a camera like this, but the chances are you're going to shake. Really good chance. And then you're going to go to a higher shutter speed to try to take out the shake. You know, you can hold it like this, take the picture, it works. But if you've got a long lens and it's got weight, you know, like this, for example, this one here is a 300, this is a 70 to 300 millimeter lens. And it's going to go out, and it's going to have some weight. This is an old Canon camera lens. It has weight. You can buy the new ones. They're cheap. They're all plastic. They don't have a lot of weight to them, but sometimes the old metal ones are really worth it. So, you know, look at that. You know, this is twice the length, and now you're trying to balance this and hold it while you're trying to take a picture of an eagle in a tree on the other side of a pond. And needless to say, it might just come out blurry. But if you're going to do, if you really want to get into photography, you really need is a DSLR camera. Something with different lenses. You could do them with a point and shoot. There are some really good point and shoot cameras out there that are maybe like about $1,200. And they take some magnificent pictures, but they're not going to get a zoom lens on it for far distances. You're going to end up having to blow them up, and you lose detail when you blow things up. So the basic thing with the point and shoot is there's basically four settings in the camera that you have. One of them is film speed. Now, film speed was what we called it with film. Now they call it now it's referred to ISO, Don't ask me what ISO stands for. But at any rate, it's the same thing as film speed, same thing as ASA, which is film speed and grain when it was film. And what the film, they used little pieces of grains that were embedded into the cellulose film. And the larger the grains, the more sensitive to light they are. The finer the grain, the less sensitive. So a 100 ASA would be great for the beach, be great for snow places, any place where the sun is very bright. And then you could get astounding detail. But as you go more like, say, into the woods, where you have a tree cover, you're going to have a problem with lighting. And you don't want to use a flash in nature if you can help it. I think a bear might frown just a little bit of you taking a picture of them with a big flash. So then you would raise your ASA up from 100 to 200 or 400. You'd try each way to get to the light that you need without getting too much noise. You're probably in safe around 400. If you start going higher than that, it's going to get very grainy. Like if you're doing a night shot, you might need it higher up. But you might be able to tolerate it at a higher shot. It all depends on what you're looking for and what kind of detail. Now, if you're a paparazzi trying to get some, model or actor or actress or politician, you're probably going to you're not going to care about grain. But if you're trying to take a nice quality photograph that you can make prints of, maybe post a print up on your wall in your home or sell them in an art studio, you're going to want to be particularly concerned about quality, which means you're not going to shoot in auto, you're going to go into manual mode. So similar to a point and shoot, but not all point and shoots have this ability, is that you basically have three priorities. One's the auto, of course. The second one is shutter speed. Now the shutter speed stops time. So the slower the time, like if you're shooting fireworks, you're going to want a slow shutter speed. You want that lens exposed for a longer period of time so you get the sparks and the streams, and it's a low light because it's 1,000 feet in the sky and you're not real close to them and you don't want to be close to them. And so you're going to want to open that lens up for maybe 5 seconds. So with that, you're probably going to have to compensate with the aperture, but the aperture, it's not going to make much difference that far away. Which brings me on to what the aperture. So the faster the shutter speed, the more time you could stop. If you're trying to take pictures of a speeding train going by and you're stationary watching the tracks and you're looking at it and it's going this way and you want to stop it because it's the silver bullet, you're going to probably use a very high shutter speed. You might try to go as high as you possibly can, and you're going to take some pictures of actually nothing, just so you make sure you get a good quality before the train actually gets there. And then when it gets there, you can take a picture of it. Doesn't hurt to take pictures, particularly in the digital world, of nothing to get a good exposure, so when the thing really happens, you're all ready and you're prepared. That's what shutter speed is all about. Now the other setting is aperture. Now aperture is depth of field. Depth of field is basically, right now I'm sitting here talking to you, and I got, cameras and stuff in front of me. And then about 10 feet away, there's a bear. It could be Winnie the Pooh, but he doesn't like being called Winnie the Pooh. And he's up there on a shelf. It's a pass-through. Now behind the shaft-through, there's a fan turning, a ceiling fan. And after that, there is a Genica crystal hanging from the ceiling. And after that, there's a curtain on the wall. And with the eye focuses all those things. And I can tell in my brain that's 10 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, all those distances. And what you want to do is recreate that image on film so they all look like they are at those distances. Now if you use a smartphone, you take the same picture, you may not know how far apart everything is because there's no depth of field in a smartphone. The smartphone has to calculate out depth of field and try to interpret it and give it to you that way. It doesn't always work. That's why sometimes when you look at something like, say, a bridge, if you're in there, my daughter takes lots of pictures of bridges, and she'll be underneath the bridge and she'll see all the pilings, and they'll have this, it'll be a great photograph, except you can tell there's no depth of field and you really can't see the distances. There's another area not far from here, and you probably have them near you, where there's forests, and when they planted the trees, they went in lines. It's direct lines of trees. So as you drive through them, you can see a path going straight through the trees, and it's a very cool effect, particularly if there's a driveway running through them. Now, if you want to get depth of field, you're going to want a high number, like an f/16. However high up your it'll go. Like on this camera here, the highest it goes is an f/29, which is kind of pretty high, you know, and that's because of my lens. Because the opening of my lens is large, so it can accommodate that. And what it's doing is it's closing up the aperture so that it lets light in. Now I know you're saying, well, didn't that other one also let light in? It's a combination between everything. It's what you want to achieve. If you're looking for depth of field and not stopping action, you can settle with going down low on your shutter speed, and then in order to gain your depth of field. If shutter speed is important, then you're going to have to sacrifice aperture. And if you need to, you can increase your ASA, your ISO, you know, one digit, you know, from 400 to 600 or to 800, to try to achieve the balance between those other ones without getting too much grain. So, yeah, I know, it's very complicated. But to tell you the truth, once you do it for a while, it becomes very inherent, because you can basically know is that when you move one number, you can just move the other number in the opposite direction. So right now I'm at 1/60th of a second, f/29, and I probably won't take the picture. But if I wanted to move it down a little bit, as a matter of fact, this one's got information on it. Tells you it's going to bring the background closer, brings the background more in focus to avoid camera shake or use a tripod. It's kind of giving you little tips. I should turn that off, but I'm leaving it on for a little while until I learn this camera. So when you do one change, you do the other change in the opposite direction. So if you're say at f11, like right now I'm at f11. So say I'm at f8 and I'm at 160 shutter speed, and I want to go up a little bit on my shutter speed, I got to go down on my aperture. And then you're going to leave your ISO in the same spot in hoping to achieve the quality you want. What you really want to do is try to go to the lowest ISO you can with the light available. You know, during the day you could probably easily be at 100 or 200 and be fine. But when you get around dusk time, you might have to go to 400 to achieve the same photograph. And that's a trade-off for you. That's what you have to do. You know, you might have to use a tripod. I have mounts that I can mount to the car window that'll hold the camera steady, so if I'm taking a picture out the window, it will hold that camera steady. I often use them for video cameras. And it's just a dance. You just sit there and play back and forth. Now, all cameras don't have, they have dischangeable lenses within their own series, but they're not across models. So a Pentax or an Olympus can't use Canon cameras. There's adapter rings you can get to use them for different cameras. The most common ones out there are Canon Nikon. Now those are the kind of the most common used cameras out there, and then there are other ones, Olympus and Sony and everybody else. But whoever you choose, you know, like this is my third Canon DSLR, digital single lens reflex. They all use the same lens mount. So actually, if you look on Craigslist, or you look on Facebook Marketplace, and you see someone selling a film-based camera for $50, but it's got this 300mm zoom on it, you buy the camera and you put the camera away somewhere, and you keep the lens for your digital camera. And it's a one way to get around buying the camera lens, you know, at retail value or so forth. You can get, a lot of places have them used. You can get a good quality lens used from like BH&H Photo or Amazon, or you know, Adorama. You know, there's different ones out there that have online used cameras and used camera lenses and flashes and all that. So that is a quick intro to using a DSLR camera. I hope that you can go and play around with your camera, and don't be afraid to do it. I'll put a link down in the description, a link to this one. By the way, I have an Amazon store, and if you go into my store, say for example, you click on the link for this camera in my description, it'll bring you into, and then anything you buy on Amazon after you've clicked on that link, as long as you don't close the window and go in again from another link, anything you buy, I'll get a piece of that. Now it's not much, it may be 2 cents, but 2 cents adds up, you know. It's just a way for you to support my channel. I'm all self-supporting, and you know, obviously don't make zillions of dollars from YouTube, so any kind of help I can get is really appreciated. And that's an easy way. I mean, I actually have mine link up to another friend on Amazon, and I buy a lot of Amazon product. So I appreciate any support you have out there for it. And yeah, it's even funny because it says blur and sharp, so it even helps you if you raise up your when you're on the lower aperture, which means it's open wider for a longer period of time, for whatever time period you have for the shutter speed. You know, what you focus on, like say a person. So if you're doing portraits, for example, you want to take a picture of the face, have the face in focus, but you don't want to have the background in focus. You want to have that kind of blurred out a little bit. So that's a reason to open up the lens a bit, so that you get a great picture of the person, and people aren't looking at the tree in the background or the red Corvette in the background or something like that. So until next time, we close, sending you peace, sending you happiness, sending you joy.